Hello, and welcome to the Alchemists Inkwell.
This is your spiritual podcast for grounded people.
I'm Emily.
I'm KristaLyn, and this week and next week are a little bit further from grounded than we might like, but we are going to be entering Taurus season amidst all of it. So maybe there's some grounding to be had. I'm not going to make promises on that when I talk about a little bit about what's going on with the eclipse / Taurus season / Mercury retrograde that all happen within hours of each other on Thursday, the 20th into the 21st of April.
Yeah. This is an Eclipse Prepisode.
You
I knew you'd like that.
You saved that on me.
I did. I was like, oh, I was gonna say it, and then when we were discussing what we're talking about, but I saved it till now.
Rarely will you see me filled with more genuine joy than when someone has a really good pun, and that was it. Thank you.
You're very welcome. That's why I saved it. Yes, this is the Eclipse Prepisode that we're talking about. This is voted on by our patrons, but it's also just really something that we really, really wanted to make sure that we cover. Judging by what I see in the energy, I know that the next couple of weeks are very dynamic, but also I know astrologically the next couple of weeks with these eclipses are very dynamic as well. So this is us talking about it and getting you aware and ready to embrace this energy, however it may show up for you.
Yeah. So I've already been looking into this lunation and the next two. So the next two lunations, this new moon coming up and the full moon after that will be eclipses. That's how they work. The one after that, I do want to preface this, guys. The one after that is it's a new moon in Taurus, and it actually looks quite nice. So I just want to say there is like warm, fuzzy, cozy astrology on the horizon. It's not just chaotic, surprising, dynamic, all of these words that we try to use to say, hey, stuff is changing. Stuff is changing.
Everything is chaotic forever. I'm just kidding. No, it feels really good.
Yeah. Everything came from chaos. So, I mean, it's fine. We're just getting back to our roots, right? So really this eclipse, before I dive into it, I want everybody to like take a second and think back a couple weeks ago to March 21st and even go back in your journal. I'm pretty sure that we even recommended journaling at that time because this was coming. So go back in your journal and go back in your memory, check what pictures you may have taken or what you may have posted on social media, any way that you can kind of go back and be like, what was going on in my life around that time? And how might it relate to where Aries is in my chart? And when I say where Aries is, you want to look for the pie slice of your chart, one of the 12 sections of your chart that Aries takes over, that Aries covers in your preferably circular chart. But if you have one of those grid ones as well, just see where Aries falls, which house Aries falls in, and the themes that go along with that. These may be being revisited, not unlike retrograde, but actually a little bit different because the last time we had a new moon, it was also in Aries and it was at like 0 towards 1 degree Aries. So it was very early, which meant that by the time the moon came back around again for another new moon, we're still in Aries. Now we're at the 29th degree of Aries in 50 minutes. So we're like 10 degree minutes away from both the moon and sun being in Taurus. Fun fact for people who are interested in astrology, the 29th degree of a sign is called the anaretic degree. And that's just a really fancy word for saying last degree of the sign. And it's considered pretty charged up because it's the planet. I haven't said this to any of my astrologer friends yet, but this is what I think of every time they explain it. They're like, the planet's not really in Aries, but it's not really in Taurus yet. And so I always think my 90s brain is like, not yet, or not a girl, not yet a woman. Start quoting Britney Spears. And so you're in this in-between space of pulling away from what you were and getting ready to discover what comes next. And it's that very like stuck in the middle moment, which can be a lot of built up pressure as well. Thinking about Aries being a fire sign, cardinal, dry, hot, like all of these things kind of speak to pressure to begin with. Aries, the first sign of the zodiac, the sun being exalted here, about to step out of exaltation. There's a lot of like, what haven't I done? How can I finish it really fast before I have to move on into something that doesn't support me as well? Like, how can I have the best last day at Disney World ever before I have to fly home? And the best might be just getting a lot in and it might be hectic and you might be exhausted afterwards. Something really, really good might happen. This is where the North Node is after all. So we're going to see a lot of something likely. The North Node is like the mouth of the dragon. So it takes things in voraciously, or some people will say it increases exponentially. It's just very intense increase output. If you think about maybe the South Node as a black hole, the North Node would be the white hole, almost creation of matter kind of feeling, right? So
I like that description of it, actually. That feels right.
Yeah, and then everything in the middle is just a wormhole. This is great too. It's the first time I've used that analogy. But we also have this eclipse still quite conjunct Jupiter. So Jupiter's at 23 degrees. We had the Cazimi with Jupiter on April 11th. So if you had a really good day that day, awesome. I'm so glad. But that's still in effect here, and Jupiter is a benefic. So this is lending itself to maybe something very positive or boisterous or big happening. Jupiter just likes to, it is the air as the balloon is blowing up. It blows up the balloon. It makes it bigger. And this is a hot air balloon that we're looking at here because it's an eclipse. So it's taken to an extreme. So thinking about that, again, check where Aries is in your chart. In general, Aries starts stuff and Aries is ruled by Mars. So we can think about how Aries can have some themes about being combative, or being initiatory, starting something new, leaving behind something old. Thinking about the fact that this is a solar eclipse means that we're looking towards areas of leadership or figures of leadership being affected by this. There's a story that astrologers love to tell that in medieval times, when there was a solar eclipse, the king would actually give up the crown for a day to just some random person, so that if the solar eclipse damaged the king, it would damage the fake king. And even Picatrix will say like accidents, damage to things that are, hang on, I really do want to look up this word.
Oh, you're good.
It causes damage to things that are made up of the 4 elements, like us. It exclusively points out that like the planets and things of the celestial realm are kind of exempt from that because they're not in the cosmology as made up of the 4 elements, the earth, water, wind, fire kind of thing, air, fire. I did quote Picatrix like word for word in the video I made for YouTube that'll be coming out soon, so you can get the exact quote there. But it just talks about how like the sun and the moon are doing something, and it's changing the world below. It's bringing everything in. And to me, it's like the blip between existence of an atom. When an atom exists, blinks out for a second and rewrites itself and then blinks back in, anything could happen in there. We do not know enough to be able to say what that should be, which is why I suggest, as do all of the magic books, don't try to perform magic. Don't do like an eclipse ceremony. I've seen a couple of these happening and it's like, interesting. You might be asking for a lot more than you anticipated. And adding that, we even have on this day, Mercury is very close to Uranus, conjunct in the sky in Taurus. Mercury, already mercurial, like that's where the word came from. Uranus is surprise and revolution, individuality.
I was just saying, like, this seems like the type of prank where a bucket of water falls on your head,
right?
Yeah.
Even more chaotic, Mercury's stationary. By the next day, Mercury will be retrograde at this very same degree. So we have Mercury who's getting ready to pivot during this eclipse. And as the eclipse progresses, the sun and the moon won't get 3 degrees apart before the sun moves into Taurus to square Pluto. So let's talk more about,
it's just going to be an interesting week.
Yeah. And that's going to set the tone for Taurus season as well, right? Because the birth of Taurus season is when the sun moves into Taurus immediately to square Pluto. So that actually will perfect throughout the day as well. So we start with an eclipse, which moves into Taurus season, which moves into.
Did you go over the dates of these just one more time in case everyone missed them?
There's only one. So here's the great news. It's just April 20th. Actually, the eclipse.
Just 420, guys.
Yeah. The eclipse is at 12:12 a.m. Eastern time. So adjust that to your time zone. Definitely look it up and like know it with the chart if you want to like get really into it. The conjunction that I spoke of with Uranus and Mercury will not become perfect because they are going to stay 2 degrees apart, because Mercury will turn around and sometime on the 21st will begin their retrograde that lasts through May 15th.
I just share something that's like a very California fact.
Oh gosh.
So in California, obviously it's on the 19th, because if it's at 12:20 a.m., it's not that for us, where it's 9
Oh
p.m.
yeah,
on
it
the
is on the
19th.
19th. Yep.
The 19th is Bicycle Day. And if you guys have never been in any sort of psychedelic community, you probably don't know what that means. That's the day that acid was invented. And people will get together for Bicycle Day events on the night of the 19th and do just a ton of
Oh,
acid.
be very careful if you
So,
Belgian Bicycle Day this year.
so when you said that, I was like, oh, like obviously 420 is like the weed smoking holiday, but that's like much different. People will get together and do that too, but that is not the same as having an eclipse on
Yeah.
Bicycle Day.
Well, yeah, and for
Yeah.
the East
Anyway,
Coast, by the time anybody would be partaking in that, unless they decide to do it right at midnight and get a really early start, which I'm not putting past people.
yeah.
If they do it after 6, the sun will at least already be in Taurus, but then we have square
Yeah.
Pluto. So you have to be very careful with what you're doing, especially with substances that might also interact with your mind and your mental state at a time like this. I really, noticing that these dates are significant for those themes, it's something to keep in mind. Be very responsible if you choose to partake in that kind of activity right now. Just very mindful, very, very responsible. I like to say on like an eclipse, just see what happens around you and then work with
Yeah.
what the universe provides after that.
Witness and
Um,
relax.
witness and detach. Because if you're attached to a certain outcome, you might see that outcome is broken in the process of kind of delivering what is best, not what is most desired.
That's fair.
Yeah.
It's very fair. But anyway, I was just like, oh, I needed to share that because
Yeah,
some people are
no,
going to have a very eventful.
that was probably a very astute observation to make. So yes, good. Glad we got to that. Yeah, so that's the astrology of what we're looking at. And again, this is a repeat of a similar new moon that happened on March 21st. So you want to keep in mind anything that was going on around that time. I know in the world that was the day, it was a Tuesday, and it was a certain Tuesday where someone said that was going to be the Tuesday that they were going to be arrested, but it wasn't that Tuesday that it happened. It actually was like 2 Tuesdays after that. If you know what I'm referring to, you know. So just knowing that themes around that, again, we're talking about leadership. This is kings and analogous positions to kingship in all spheres. And I say that like your manager might be the king of your job, and something may happen around that. So just thinking about how that metaphorically translates into what your life is doing and how we are all a part of the same life together anyway. So what happens to the leaders and rulers of our communities and our societies really does affect us eventually.
Yeah. What I will also say with that too, we are already seeing leaders having issues this week. And I'm just going to put it that way. I did a video about that just yesterday, if you want to go look at it, because I don't want to bring all of it up here. But this is something that we at least have been talking about since October?
Yeah.
A really long time of like leadership changing and leadership getting exposed and leadership moving around
Well, and
kind of
another
on a
thing,
worldwide stage. And so that coming up yes.
another thing I noticed that is coming up again that actually started the last Mercury retrograde that was around last April, May, having to do with a certain social network.
Yes.
That is falling apart, it would seem. So again, the process of that began during a Mercury retrograde, and then the consequences of that actually came up again during another retrograde last fall. And now we're seeing again more consequences that seem to be very very like almost resolute consequences. And it just so happens they do seem to coincide a little bit with eclipse season as well, right? Like I think the one last fall wasn't right on the nose with eclipse season, but the one last spring was pretty close. And here we are with the eclipse kind of saying, yeah, that happened. And now as the eclipses, by the way, are shifting from being on the Taurus Scorpio axis to being on the Aries Libra axis, this is our very first eclipse in Aries. This is starting a new story. The next eclipse will be in Scorpio, finishing the old one. So we've got some overlap. I like to say this is the novella that bridges part 1 and part 2 of a duology.
Oh, there we go. That's good.
The in-between chapters kind of that are happening here. or the patches between big drops on video games, if you will.
Yeah. I will say it is a really good thing to journal on eclipses. That's not necessarily doing magic. It's just keeping tabs on what the heck is going on so you can go back to it. That is a really, really good idea. Doing anything where it's just like going out into nature and observing, going for a walk, going to sit on a nice little bench, like anything like that, also really aligned. Just no big ritual, magic, moon water, manifesting, like none of that stuff. It's just kind of like biting off way more than you want to chew ever is how it ends up feeling if you do that. Now, if you're a person who, when the Moldavite craze hit and you're like, I fucking love just having my whole life wrecked, give me the Moldavite, and then it wrecked your life and you're like, that was fantastic. Sure, go for it. Have fun with that. But that's how it will feel, is if you got a huge chunk of Moldavite and put it on. If you decide to do a lot of magic on the eclipse event. Now, that being said, if you're doing something that is normal for you, like if you're like going to go to yoga or whatever, like that's fine. It's not like stop your whole life. It's just,
it's not like you're saying eclipse, bow down to me.
No. Yeah. You're just, it's just being conscious of like, hey, maybe we don't do any sigil work on this. Maybe we don't make a talisman in Krista's case, right? Like it would be that kind of.
I would not.
It's that kind of energy. So just preparing in that sort of space. That's, and just observing. Always, and I said this actually for this week as well, because of the Jupiter Cassini, for a lot of people, it actually resulted in like anger. There was a lot of anger energy, a lot of like frustration at the surface energy. And this eclipse, honestly, I think is going to push some of that as well, to be totally honest, is that like anger, frustration. Honestly, it feels a little bit just like people who, you know, haven't processed collective trauma very well are now having this outlet for it, which is their anger that they haven't necessarily let come to the surface. So just before you react to things, just breathe through it, take some time, sleep on it, observe your feelings before you acknowledge and understand them. Just observe them for a little bit if you can. Even if you just write out on a document everything you're feeling, or like vent to somebody everything you're feeling, but don't react to everything you're feeling in a way of like lashing out. Just observe, because you will probably find that that is actually not what you're feeling at the core of it. You're not actually angry. You're just sad about this or annoyed at this or whatever it is, but it's coming up as this like anger blob. And that is what a lot of people are experiencing. And I think with the eclipse, especially with, I think some of the things that are going to come up during the eclipse season, at least the first eclipse, as far as with leadership and stuff, I think there's going to be a lot of tension between people that really like certain leaders or don't like certain leaders or those kinds of things. I'm going to say, okay, just one note on that. It is so important to remember those people are strangers. Like,
you don't know
leaders
them.
in the world, leaders in the world are fucking
you.
strangers. They are strangers. They do not know you. Same with like celebrities. Like, don't defend them. You don't know them. Like that you might like what they have said, but they could be the worst narcissists in the world and just really good at love bombing everybody. And we would not know. So when that comes up, like if you like someone, you can talk about why you like them, but don't defend their actions. They are strangers to you and owe you nothing and will not acknowledge or care that you have done so.
And maybe
that's my piece on it.
On that note, maybe don't get so attached to liking that person. You can like what they make. You can like their art.
Their ideals.
You don't have to be an avenger for that person, because then you like sign yourself up for something that they wouldn't be there for you on.
Yeah. 100%. I just there was a really nasty interaction in my comments yesterday, and it bothered me so much, where someone came in that video I made about the spiritual leader that got fairly exposed over the last week or so, and I just kind of duetted someone else's video take about that. Which, keep in mind, I did research about it first. I was like, is this a cultural misunderstanding? What is this? It's not. It's not a cultural misunderstanding.
It was very strange.
Yeah. Part of it is a culture thing, but the way that he took it is not cultural. So do not sit there and be like, this is a culture. It's not. I did a lot of research on it before I posted that. It's not. But beside the fact, someone came in and was like, I can't wait till all of you guys see, when basically putting Trump on a pedestal and being like, he's none of these things. aren't we so glad that he's none of these things? And people in the comments were like, are you insane? Like, what are you talking about? And they're like, he's not a pedo. And then they proceeded to call the other commenters like horrific names and like make horrible statements about who they are as people, whatever. And I blocked them immediately. Like, that is a hard pass. No one's allowed to do that in my comment section. If I catch you doing it, you'll be blocked. It's just how it is. But I wanted to just like scream about it of like, these people are strangers. You don't know them. You can't know them. Like, they do, unless you're in their intimate circle of friends, they're strangers. Don't defend any of their behavior ever. And if something comes up about any leader in the world, period, if something absolutely horrific or out there or whatever comes up, don't be surprised. You can't be surprised because you don't know them. Like, if you're shocked, you're like, whoa, I didn't ever think they would be like that. Just sit there and for a second and just sit there and be like, okay, well, I don't know that person. I only know what they have curated and presented to the public as an image, which is pretend. It's cosplay. That's my hill to die on.
And it's okay that they do that because they're entitled to have their personal life and their public life. There's nothing wrong with that. But just don't let yourself
cosplay stuff, not the horrible things. Just the cosplay bit.
Right. Everybody's entitled to have their personalities that they keep to themselves and the personalities that they show to other people. The choices that they make in those, that's a whole other ethical story. But it's just really important to make sure that you're putting your energy where your energy is coming back to you, rather than investing it in people that you are creating a personality for.
Yep.
Yeah. It just reminds me, and I'll be blunt about this for some reason, because I usually get very diplomatic, but it reminds me of the whole situation of you're accidentally making that figure, that theme, that whatever that you're that fixated on, you're making it your deity. And when you think about that, hey, you've practiced deity work. So if you're looking to do more deity work, you know what it looks like. Now put it into the energy that's going to come back to you, rather than one that has no way of being able to do that and to return the favor, or return the, well, favor is a great word in and of itself. Favor as in appreciation. Yeah.
I will also say though, the energy of like luck is still really high, and you touched on it a little bit with like Taurus season coming and all of that. It's very lucky. Like, it's just genuinely a lucky time for not leaders, for more common people. But just in general, like a lot of like luck energy. I don't know what you want to use that for. It's your personal decision, your personal experience that you want to have with that luck. But I definitely recommend doing something with it, even if it's just create a new affirmation for yourself that you're taking advantage of, if it's buying a lottery ticket, if it's like, I don't know what it is, whatever it is for you, lean into it, because the energy of luck is just, it's very abundant right now. It's very abundant, and it's very intriguing, and I'm excited to see how that's showing up.
Yeah. And that energy of luck originated, for anybody who's like, well, I don't know where it is and I want to find it. I'm with you. I know what that feels like. Check Aries in your chart, because that's where the Jupiter Cazimi happened. So that was that initial feeling of luck. But again, this is moving into the sun and the moon coming into Taurus. The next new moon after eclipse season will be exalted new moon, even though, the moon will be dark. But that's again, luck. It's formative. It's creation energy in this exalted space. So with resources and all of those things. Now we also have Uranus nearby. So just keeping in mind that the idea of luck might be a whole change to something you didn't see coming, but here it is, and it's amazing. And, excitement is a good word to hold on to, and just let yourself say, I'm ready to be pleasantly excited, and then see what comes from that. Not during the eclipse, but after.
Yeah. I want to see where we can see the eclipse.
Yeah. So, looking at the chart, I know that the eclipse, because it happens at like midnight on the East Coast, we're not going to see it there.
Yeah. I'm just, it's always fun to know.
Okay. So it's Singapore.
It's a lunar eclipse, or is it the solar eclipse?
Solar eclipse. Yeah. It's going to be visible in Southeast Asia. And Australia.
Yeah. And then let's see, where can we see the May lunar eclipse? Just so we have that out here.
Scorpio.
And that is Africa, Asia, Australia.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Next year, the US gets pretty decent views of eclipses. That's that one where people have been talking about it since they happened in Leo years ago. And it kind of forms an X over the US.
Yeah. Yeah. It will be a full solar eclipse over Burning Man while Burning Man is happening.
Yes.
Which is pretty fucking cool, to be totally honest.
Interesting.
Because there's no city there other times than just with Burning Man, which I just think is like a really cool synchronistic experience, like in general, even if you're not a burner and you never have gone. It's just neat like that. Otherwise there wouldn't be people there, but it just happens to be when people are there. Like that's cool.
Yeah. We'll have to see like if that plays a factor into how it shows up. It's really cool.
Yeah. And like legally you're not even allowed to camp in that desert outside of Burning Man. So you couldn't be out there anyway, unless it was Burning Man, which I think is pretty cool.
Sounds auspicious.
Right? I just thought
hopefully
that was
positively auspicious. Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully it's auspicious. Hopefully we're good with that. But anyway. Cool. I do want to do just a quick little story time, since we've covered a lot of eclipse stuff, about what's happening to me since we did our fairy episode.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. This is hilarious.
So if you haven't had a chance, listen to our fairy episode last week. We were actually together in my office, which is dark right now because I didn't turn on any of my like sparkly lights or anything. But in my office, we actually recorded together for the first time up here. And we decided we're going to do a fairy episode, which during the episode I mentioned, like, have a lot of fairy energy in my house. They're around. It's a thing. We also recommended like one of our favorite book recommendations ever to all of you. But yeah, we basically talked about them very respectfully and gave you some ins and outs of our experience with the fairies, whatever. So the next time I come up into my office after that, literally the next time, which was about 2 days later, because we had retreat the whole time, so I wasn't really in my office. So I come back in on Monday and I look at my plant, this one that has the leaf that's now grown into the space. That was not grown into the space before. It has absolutely exploded with growth. Like I cannot even describe. And it's not because the weather changed. Like it was snowing. So it was like, oh, it got really warm all of a sudden. No, like there's tons of new growth. I thought the pot had gotten turned because this whole branch back here, which I've now tied up, which is why it's not over in my space. Like actually I can like move it. It's like in my space now. I thought that it had gotten turned. It had not gotten turned. It just grew into my space significantly. And so the plant started growing massively. I was like, wow, this is weird. Okay, cool. Obviously the fairies really like that episode. Love that for us. Yay. 2 days later, I get up. I get up to wake my kids up from school. I make the fatal mistake of laying back down again. And then I hear a knock on my door and I had fallen back asleep. And my daughter was like, are you going to take me to school, Mom? And I was like, shit, yes, I'm going to take you to school. Throw on my clothes, run out the door. It had snowed again. So I had to scrape off my car, whatever, get her in the car, drive her to school, come back, braid my other daughter's hair and get their lunches ready. And then send them off to school with my husband driving them. And then for the first time, I'm able to go into the bathroom. And I had put not only my shirt on backwards, but my pants on backwards as well, which
will protect you from fairy charms.
Which will protect me from fairy charms, which I was like, it's fucking weird. Like, what's going on with that? And in some cultures, it's also a luck thing, which I thought was interesting. But I was like, I have never ever done that before, where I've put on both of them backwards. Like, that's weird, like weird. I was like, huh, that's funky. Well, now it has gotten weirder because I came up to my office 2 days ago and I look into my potted plant, the Harry potted, the plant that lived, and it's growing 2 pine trees. And it's not like little sprouts. Like these things are like 3.5 inches tall. Like, and they're coming out of nowhere. And when I say there is no possible way for these pine nuts to have gotten into the basin, I mean, there's no possible way. It is not the season where you can find viable pine nuts anymore. All the pine nuts that fell in the fall are sat on by the snow over winter to take root to like come forward in the spring. These were not in there. These were not sitting in there when we were up here recording the episode. They aren't in here. They weren't in here before. And they wouldn't be viable because they had to be sat on and moisturized all winter in order to grow. That's how pine nuts work. And I'm like, okay. And so I asked Weston, I was like, did you come upstairs and like, did you have pine seeds on your chance? And he was like, no. And he was like, maybe like, is there a squirrel? But there's no way a squirrel could have gotten in here that we wouldn't have known. And Callum would have freaked out. He would have smelled everywhere and been like,
Mhm.
holy shit, there's a squirrel in here, Mom. Like, this is not cool. So the fairies have decided that pine trees are also going to grow in my office. Like, there is literally no other explanation outside of that. But I wanted to share that with you all, just so you understand the fairy magic that occurred when we recorded together in this office. Because, like, holy damn.
But that's how it works, right? Like it's something
Mhm.
that we don't really know how it happened, but it happened, and like it's kind of undeniable.
It's 100% undeniable.
Yeah.
Like, I wish the seeds had been in there before, so I at least been like, wow, they really 100% absolutely were not. They could not have been. So
Yeah.
and they have grown so fast. Like, pine sprouts, they grow kind of fast. Like, usually by the time they come out of the dirt, they're like, a half inch tall or something. They're kind of just like boing up out of the dirt.
Mhm.
But they're a half a foot tall. Like, they're so big.
Yeah. And they
And
definitely were not there when I was there. I would have seen them.
no,
Yeah.
you would have definitely seen them. So yeah, I don't know what to do with them. I'm like, you're not going to strangle Harry Potter, but Harry Potter is having a go of all of its leaves right now.
The
So
plant
I
who
guess,
thrived.
right? Like, yeah. Anyway, I keep trying to tie back like this leaf that's like sticking in front of the screen, and I don't know how to do that. We're just going to let this leaf hang out until I figure out what to do with it.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, but I wanted to share that with you all, so that I thought I'm getting a kick out of it. I think it's hilarious.
It's nice validation. So. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, really quick, just wanted to touch base. Our Egypt trip filled up ridiculously quickly.
Yeah, that's actually been some of the questions we've gotten from patrons lately. It's like, can you still get in? Kinda.
Yeah, so you can definitely put your name on the wait list. I will say, with our trips, cancellations do happen. They actually happen pretty significantly and pretty regularly. So we have pulled from waitlist for both the Ireland trip and the Greece trip multiple times. So for Egypt, yes, you absolutely get on the wait list. It's worth it. For those of you that have secured your spot, we're so excited to travel with you. There's definitely some people who listen to the podcast that were on there, which I was so excited about. And we'll probably end up doing this trip again in the future. Like, it's obviously something that's so important to people that they want to go. So we'll probably end up figuring out a way to make sure that happens again, because we want to make sure that if it's this big of a deal, that we facilitate that in some way. But super duper cool. Thank you for that. But definitely get on the wait list. That's the only way we can really keep track of people, if people do cancel. And I mean, maybe we'll expand to, I don't know what we can do, but there's a lot of, it's a big one.
Yeah. And it's going to be super fun. And it was so cool to see names on the list of people that we recognize from being listeners and from engaging. And so thank you for always having been present. It's going to be really an honor to meet you all in person as well.
Yeah, the group feels really cool. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah.
And I know it's a year away, but it's like, oh, yay. Like, I know it feels cool. So
it's going to be good.
But yeah, that filled up really quick. But thank you so much for being there for that. And we will have more announcements later this year. So just stay tuned of other places, etc.
And speaking of things that are filling up rather quickly, pitches are open again for Forgotten Storytellers. You can go to forgottenstorytellers.com and submit your pitch. It's a form, so it's super easy. You don't have to come up with like a fancy pitch as you would for an agent. We did most of the work for you there. Submit your pitch and we will take a look at it and see if it feels aligned and reach out to you. Either way, you'll hear from us, which is rather like nice.
Yeah. And if you have submitted a pitch and haven't heard from us yet, we promise we'll get back to you soon. We just haven't had a chance to go through it yet, or, we're waiting on calendar stuff or something like that. So just know that's what it is. But yeah, pitches are open for your fiction book ideas. If you have an idea, even if it's not fully baked or you don't know how it's going to show up, that's totally fine. That's kind of the idea. That's what we're here to help with. The cohort starts in June, so submit your pitches now because they fill up. Honestly, our cohorts fill up pretty quickly, as you guys probably experienced on here. But yes, pitches are open and we'd love to have you join. They're super fun.
Yeah, such a great time.
Also, just a quick side note, both Krista and I have started individual YouTubes as well with some like kind of different content. Some longer form content that we mostly do like on our like TikToks or Instagram, that sort of stuff, just taking that content and stretching it and adding more. So we would love for you to go take a listen there or take a look there, check those out. Not saying we're going to abandon this YouTube by any means.
No.
It's just another thing that we've got going on to kind of give you guys more stuff, to more ways to interact with us. So those are both there.
If you want to see an actual chart illustration of this eclipse and have me go through the whole chart, what's going on, timing of it, and adding actual astrological resource texts to it to really help explain why we view things the way we do, all that stuff. It's like a fun astro study for this video that'll be released soon.
Yeah. So definitely go check that out. I've got a bunch of stuff going on. There's no cohesiveness. It's just a bunch of like what strikes in the moment. But yeah, that's there. Also, thank you to our patrons for being with us. We appreciate you. We do have, polls in there if you want to vote on what we talk about on the podcast. We do bonus videos. We have tons more information. So we'd love to have you in the Patreon space. It's super amazing. And yeah, thank you to all our listeners. It's great to chat with you. We hope you have an amazing eclipse.
The best possible expression that you can have. Keep an eye on headlines, keep an eye on what's going on in the world, and just know that like you're a part of this big thing that's happening as it unfolds. So yeah. And we'll talk more about the lunar eclipse when that does come up. Yeah.
The cozy energy that we get after that. So anyway, we hope you're having a wonderful week and that you
go make some
magic. I think we did great. Yeah, it was good.
It'll never be good as last week, but hey.
No.